Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming today. This webinar is going to be both live, and we're recording it to present it to members around the state of our various home builder associations around the state. And our topic today is, frankly, are you getting paid to go green? The idea is, how can we help you as builders get some of the money back that you have to invest in energy savings in your homes? And more importantly, affordability. We're trying to make sure that we can present a home that is not only a high quality home, but is an energy efficient home at a price that's affordable. And that's why part of the major part of the message today is, what are the incentives, tax credits, and that benefits that you can get as a builder to offset some of the costs that you have to put into a building to make it a cutting edge, energy efficient home for your customer. And at this point, and I'm Paul Colgan, by the way, I'm the Government Affairs Consultant for the Building Industry Association of Greater Chicago. And today's event is going to be a collaboration between BIAGC and the Home Builders Association of Illinois. And here representing HBAI is the state president, Alan Drew. He will give you a little bit of a background and information on the energy codes and what's going on in Springfield with them. And then we'll go to the utilities, and then we'll go to our main speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We'll update what's going on with the energy codes. As some of you probably know, I sit on the advisory council for the Illinois Energy Conservation Code. And with it, it's been a long process. And during this length of time, we have seen some of the codes starting to change, coming out from IECC with the 24 code, and that's putting a stall on the stretch code portion for sure, because the the commercial side voted to wait until the 24 code came out so they can see what they want to do for the 21 code before they change the 24 code again in a probably short period of time. So with the base code, that still is not enacted yet. It still has to go through JCAR. They are getting together soon to go through the second round of the public comment period. We are working still to try and see what we can do to roll back what the 24 code shows, mainly with insulation at this point. That's just the easy part, because the 24 IECC code shows adding insulation at R60 does not have a payback beyond R49. We're just asking to add that part. I did get a response from the state on that basically, no, they're going to stick with what they believe is better. And that is, you're going to have R60 for a short period of time until it goes to R49 there sometime thereafter, most likely. But the Illinois rules, the rules to adopt the full 21 IECC as Illinois base energy code are still in JCAR, Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. The process specifically within the first notice period, therefore, all correspondence and comments related to rulemaking are required to be filed with JCAR. Once all the information is compiled and submitted, the Illinois Capital Development Board will ask that the rulemaking move to the second notice with JCAR. It is unclear what the exact timeline will be until formal adoption by the state. So we're still going to be operating off the 2018 code until further notice, and stretch code will be looked at more towards October. And that's the update with the energy code stuff. Does anybody have any questions that I can try to answer?
You got a crystal ball on that 2021 code coming into place?
Yes. And it's going to be, you know, today it says that they're going to want to enforce the full 21 code. Is that what's going to end up happening? That's what we're, you know, being told. And they have it in writing at this point, you know, in time. And I believe the reason why they're doing that is because of the monies that are available, you know, to qualify for the IRA. And this is what they believe you have to do. There's another state out there, Massachusetts, that went ahead and made amendments to help make it a little bit easier with what they call some trade-offs. So they went back to the R49 attic and they went to a mass wall of the 2018 code, but you have to then add out of this array of options to increase percentages, which were beyond simple to do and cost effective. What we would like to be able to see is what Michigan does, and that is you cannot increase the energy code unless there's a payback period within 7.5 years. And that would be nice. That makes a lot of sense, but we're not seeing that. So the crystal ball, I hate to, in all honesty, it's about as fuzzy as can be.
Do we have an actual, like maybe some type of chart or some kind of list that define what we have to move forward to the 2021 and the cost of doing that in a typical home?
So there was a study that was done in Kansas City that came up with average additional cost of the 21 base code to be about $30,000 on a 2,500 square foot house. That's what they come up with. And they went extensive, you know, through that. We've asked for the state to do a cost analysis, and they won't do it because there's no money and there's no code to say, well, how do you do this analysis unless we have a code? So it kind of feels like you have to, you know, approve it before you can do anything about it.
You know, one of the things that I fear is in today's rising interest rates, how many people are we going to knock out of the market? Affordability of housing. You know, and if we just look at something at $25,000 over 30 years, that's almost $200 a month.
So National Association of Home Builders did a study of for every $1,000 it costs more to build, knocks out 7% of the public by public. So every $1,000 goes up, that's 7% at that time. That knocks out a lot of people. And at the cost of what this is, and when to push more towards the net zero minimum for building comes, that will knock out 100,000, maybe more, because that net zero cost analysis that was done for climate zone 5 will be about $60,000 extra to be net zero after rebates. That's already with rebates being given. So that's, you know, cost of your solar panels and everything to be able to be net zero. So it's going to get a little bit expensive. So, and it's going to take a lot of people out of the market. So what I like to talk about with other people during our meetings is you're creating renters, you're not creating home buyers. And it doesn't faze them at all. And that would be also the special interest groups, you know, as well. They're on a mission. That's it.
I feel sorry for that young family who's trying to get ahead. It's really pushing them off to home ownership is not even something that might be equal.
Well, the other parts that you look at too is those people might either have to move out of state, they have to move somewhere else. There are people moving more into whether it's Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Kentucky. Yes, they are leaving the state, and there'll probably be more leaving potentially. depends on which way. This is just the energy codes. We're not even into construction codes yet.
Do we know what the surrounding states, Wisconsin, Indiana are doing and Missouri?
Well, yes, I do. I have a pretty good long list of what they're all doing. And a lot of them are looking to try to do the same thing with the energy code. There are some states out there, such as North Carolina says, you know, no, they decided not to participate in that program. But the other part you look at too is you can have all these codes, whatever they are. How do we enforce them? Who's going to do that? Who's paying for that? Who gets away with it? And the answers to all that has always been most of these municipalities, they can't afford to increase their employment for more people to now just do enforcement. It's going to be very tough, if not completely impossible. So once we no longer have that, it just kind of shows that it's all about the money. To whom? So I'd be curious myself what's going to happen in the next 6 months, let alone in 2 years. So, yes.
Does the state or any of the like Chicago or cities around Illinois, do they have like net zero building targets? Like after a certain date, they want everything to be net zero?
35.
35.
Yeah. Which, and when you really look at that 11, 12 years from now, it's really not far, you know, away. What we're starting to see now too, I've been reading, is the average size of the home, because of what's going on, is shrinking. You know, it's getting smaller, and that's because of costs. You know, as far as, you know, need goes, there was the, you know, builders of the past that was, you know, big and boxy. You know, people will buy it because it's about the square footage that you can build it for, you know, fairly cheap. So it's the strategic move, or more people are smaller with more bells and whistles in the house. That's what's going to happen. And you can make them quite efficient, because that envelope is really not hard to do. Just don't make it harder than hard already. So, anybody else?
That study that you cited earlier from the NAHB, if I got this correctly, was for every increase of $1,000, you knocked out
7%.
7%. So
Of the buying
$10,000 increase, it knocked out 70% of the market.
Well, every time you raise it, that 1,000, that's 7% at that level. You go up another 1,000, that's 7% of the remaining level. So it's not where you go up $10,000, knocked out 70%. It's the total percentage at that point in time is lesser. So it's of the remaining balance.
Right.
But you still look at that as $1,000 knocks out 7% at one swig right there. That's a lot. Yes.
A couple points to address, and you know, it's good to hear what you're saying. I'm an architect. We had a client who was a very young couple. This was their first house, and they took on building first house and wanting it to be net zero ready. And they'll add the solar panels when they afford it. And I don't know the total cost of the home. There was stuff that they paid for, and I don't know exactly what they paid for, but it was under $400,000 from the contracting side, which was most of the house. You know, they bought tile off of Craigslist and stuff like that. So I don't know what that cost, but it meant passive house. So it was R60 in the ceiling, R40 in the walls. And if you think about it, the insulation is not the expensive part of the house. Your plumbing, your electrical, your concrete, that's the expensive part of the house. And that's no different.
Well, it's your wall, your mass wall is what matters to
The
get
wall-
that insulation.
The wall got thicker, the whole exterior was 2x6s, but we kept the house small, but it was quite serviceable, 3-bedroom, great room with really nice exposed beams and you know, kitchen, living room, dining area, nice utility room and mudroom, and it had all the bells and whistles that everybody wants today. You know,
Square feet.
1,400. I mean, it's a
Basement.
no basement,
Slab.
slab, highly insulated slab.
Right.
But,
I've built a passive
it's,
house.
I'll tell you what, I do $5 million houses. And I told the client, I am jealous of your house. Because, you know, they have a very low energy bill. They made it through last winter without issue. And they, you know, we're gonna go build one of those for us. It's just, you know, you get to have a smaller heating plant. You know, they have a mini split that heats the whole house. And, I know there's a lot of skeptics in the room, but if you want to keep the energy bills low, this is just another way to think about it.
There's more than one way to think about it, there's no doubt, and, you know, as builders go, builders are willing to build it.
Right, here's another thing, not everybody needs a 3-car garage and a great room and a living room, and, you know, I think we've got a little extreme with what everybody thinks you're supposed to have. Because I think there's a lot of supposed to haves in this country that.
Well, I believe that we've gone through a phase of housing expectations, you know, in size, and what do you get for it? And so many experts will tell you, well, we got by because of energy costs were cheap for so long.
Right.
The energy costs were cheaper than insulation, basically. Well, that's all changed. So now you have to redesign, you know, what your house is, how it operates. You know, the envelope being, as I tell everybody, is probably the most important thing. It's not the granite.
And everybody thinks it's the granite and you know, these same people that can't afford a house want to sign up for $100 per square foot backsplash tiles. So it's like, you know, choose your priorities.
And I think people are getting closer, you know, to that. But if people are making more money and they can afford it, they're willing to do it. And, you know, again, as us builders, if you want that, here's what it costs. And they say, okay, great, well, we're gonna build it. I mean, that's what we do, you know, but at the same time, if we're looking to put up houses that are, you know, on spec, we want to also make sure that we're not gonna price ourselves out of not having a customer.
True.
We still need buyers for those houses and keeping things realistic. And then we go to, again, another customer that I'm looking to build a passive house for. It's going to be just over $2.5 million. There's a lot to talk about in that whole thing, but that's what it costs because that's where the design came from that architect. And there's a lot of.
But now the word's gonna get out that you need $2.5 million to build a passive house, and that's not true.
No, this
You need
is
$2.5 million for the.
this is a $2.5 million wow house.
Yeah,
This is just because it's passive, you know, that's just a pretty much something on the side, if you will. That's an extra, you know, that you wanted. I could build that same house for that whole design for probably half that. I would, but it'd be a little bit more than that.
You know, I just kind of ran some numbers. We're looking about, you know, that comes up to about $285 a square foot. We could build that house at about 190 if you have some nice features, very nice features added to it. If you add $134,000 difference, 7.25% over 30 years, the payment just increased to an additional $914. That closed a lot of people off the market. That means they have to make it another $56,000 a year to afford that home. That shuts out a lot of people. That's what we're here about, trying to provide homes for people. And what's the payback on doing that?
Well, and that's where the cost differences do come in, you know, because of how do you make 1,400 square foot that igloo cooler? And that takes a lot of the right insulation underneath the slab that is compressible foam to handle the weight, you know, over time. And yes, you have a high, very high energy efficient home, from that standpoint. And if you're gonna have walls that are so thick, R45 is the passive house, or has been the passive house standard. And that's all the way around. Dr. Wolfgang Feist from Germany, who really brought the passive house movement back here, stated that R45 is the point of no return on insulation in climate zone Y, which is also in Germany. So R60, what does it do? I hear people doing R100. I don't know why.
Diminishing returns.
The diminishing returns is all over the place. It's by the energy code, when you had to insulate your hot water lines, you had to do that for a couple of years, and they said, no, take that out because there was no return. So if we keep studying and always coming out with the rollbacks where they need to be, it keeps things cost effective too. It helps. We don't want to say cheap, we want to say cost effective. Put your money where your mouth is type thing and have a payback to it. Somewhere in that 7.5 years, I myself personally would be happy at 10 years, but 7.5 seems to make sense. Everybody has a social conscious for building what they build to. That does happen. They're all about, I've got this. So, anybody else? Thank you very much.
I want to begin this next segment by thanking our two sponsors today, Ameren, Illinois and Nicor Gas. And without their support and their help, we wouldn't be able to put this program together. And before I move on though, one of the important things about having Alan up here talking is the advocacy that the Home Builders Association of Illinois gives you as members in Springfield is critical. Because while some people may choose to invest more in a home, it's our job to look at what's affordable and what is the baseline, where is the payback. And if people want to choose to do more, God love them, we're all for it. And if they can do more to reduce the impact of their home, great. But energy efficiency, I still think is one of the best things going for us, because the energy we don't use is cheap, it's free. The energy we don't use is also clean, because we're not using it. So the cleanest energy and the cheapest energy is the energy we don't use. And so part of what we're going to hear today from our two utility sponsors is information about their energy efficiency programs and the rebates that they're offering you as a builder. And I'd like to invite up from Ameren, Illinois, Melissa Calloway. She's an account executive, and she will give you a quick little rundown of what Ameren offers. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for that introduction. Like you said, I'm Melissa Calloway. I'm an account manager with the Ameren, Illinois territory. So anything south of ComEd or Nicor as well, I-80. So Ameren, Illinois and our energy efficiency programs, we really want to help, and we strive to help our customers improve comfort, manage usage, and reduce cost. Okay. We have different programs for our business customers and residential customers. So one of the great key takeaways I want you guys to take away today is our website, AmerenIllinoisSavings.com. If you go to AmerenIllinoisSavings.com, there is a plethora of information regarding our energy efficiency programs. So like I said, we provide business and residential. And when you think about residential, think about obviously single family, new construction, rehab, multifamily, and we also have programs for mobile homes as well. With that being said though, I actually focus on our midstream program with instant incentives. I actually work with several different distributors throughout the Ameren, Illinois territory who work with contractors. And we actually provide instant incentives. You were just talking about mini splits, and you said there's a lot of people on the fence right now. Well, and I think that there's a lot of people on the fence because we all forget that technology improves every year. We're always wanting the next best thing. I don't know whose cell phone, but you remember the cell phones that were look like walkie-talkies? Look how much they have changed. So with that being said, like with our mini splits for residential customers in our Ameren, Illinois territory for electric customers and gas, well, for the gas, we have up to $1,000 incentives. We have smart thermostat incentives, ducted air source heat pumps, central air conditioners, heat pump water heaters, gas furnaces, and mini splits on the residential side. When you think about the business side, we have all of that plus larger equipment, and there's no limits on the business. So if you are working with engineers, architects, other contractors, make sure that you are actually going out to the AmericanIllinoisSavings.com to find out what they're going to qualify for, okay? If you need any information, I have my business cards out here at the table. We have some cute little giveaways, and then also my phone number and just some other flyers that you will be able to take back. Thank you guys for having me today. I really appreciate it, Paul, and come out and see us.
Any questions for her? Any questions for Elizabeth before she goes?
Are these programs available to home builders, or are they strictly available to the customer that we sell to?
Okay, so like with the new construction and everything, that is something that I am not fully equipped to answer. But again, we have new construction that we can actually push you through. So if you want to reach out to me, let me know, and I will make sure that you get to the right contact for that, okay?
Because I reached out to a couple suppliers and they indicated to me that it wasn't available to the builder, it was only available to the customer.
Mhm. So we have different programs, and so like even with our instant incentives, like our mini split, if you're the contractor, you go to your distributor, there's an instant incentive that comes straight back to that contractor, and we're hoping that the contractor is going to push through that incentive, a portion of that incentive, or all of that incentive to that homeowner, so that way they're buying better energy efficient equipment that we have that's eligible. Does that answer your question somewhat, or no?
It does a little bit. I hope that we'll be talking in the near future too, that will help you navigate through your website.
Yep, not a problem. You reach out to me, and if I'm not the person, I will make sure that you get to the person that you need, okay?
Thank you.
Not a problem. Anybody else? Good. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Just another reminder that we got to make sure the builders are well compensated in these programs too, not just the existing home buyers. So we'll be working with Ameren, Illinois to make sure that that connection is made. And I also want to make a point here that the information we talk about here today and the links, for those of you who are watching the recording, we will make that available as part of the recording. And those of you who are here today, we'll follow up with an email with the contact information for you. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Nicor Gas, Janet Sebahar, who's going to come in and give us the rundown of what Nicor can offer the builders. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I have a presentation.
Excellent.
Okay, perfect. First thing, my name's Janet Sebahar. I'm not the residential new construction program manager, but he wasn't available. So I'm the Trade LA Outreach Manager, so I can talk about a lot of our offerings. And the first thing I want to say is Nicor Gas we have an energy efficiency program, and our goal is to design and implement cost-effective energy efficiency, energy savings programs for all our customers. So we have it for our residential customers, our business customers. We have it for residential builders, commercial builders. We have it for all our customers, private and public. So we have a lot, but today I'm just going to focus on our residential new construction program. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but for Nicor Gas customers in the Nicor Gas territory, we have incentives based on installing energy efficiency equipment and then envelope improvements. We have two kind of tiers. And rebates are paid to the builder as well as the verifier who verifies that the work was done. So we have a prescriptive and a performance rebate option. So the prescriptive path is pretty straightforward. You put in an advanced smart thermostat, a high efficiency furnace, and you get $115. And the builder gets the $115, and a verifier gets $75 for verifying that it was done. And I'll talk to you about how simple it is to do this. It takes about 10 minutes. It's with an app. It's very simple. Anybody can be a verifier. Even the builder can verify their own home. Or you could have your HVAC contractor, a rater, whoever. The main thing too is you have to have no atmospherically vented water heater in there. Then we have two performance options. We have the base package where you install a 92% AFUE and you have to do measurements for the blower door. So you have to do duct sealing and air sealing, and it has to meet these requirements. And you get $115. Again, the verifier gets 75. And then the next one is if you install a 95% AFUE, still meeting those same requirements, 145 and $75. And the more I talk to builders, everything helps, right? People are watching, $100, they're switching from equipment if they're saving $100. So it's important to kind of look at these rebates and take advantage of them. So we kind of went over this, but we have the prescriptive, 2 performance paths. Oh, you also get with the performance path, if you put in advanced thermostat, that's an additional $25 for rebate. So how do you verify it? Very simple. There's an app on your phone and it's called House Raters, and you can kind of go ahead and you collect data like, the photos, and you could do it right from the phone. It geofences, it knows where it is. Model serial number, size and efficiency, performance testing reports, anything like that. So here's the House Rater program. You can create, it's mobile friendly, cloud-based, quick registration for new users, so anybody could be a verifier. You can create a project and you can save it and come back to it. So it's very nice. And if you have questions, you can go to House Rater. There's a YouTube channel for tutorials, or you can go email support@houseraters.com. So it's very simple. It's very intuitive. You scroll through it, you take pictures, you get real-time feedback if something's missing, so you won't mistake in the submission and it gets accepted. So we also have, if you're a builder that does commercial new construction, like business new construction, we also have rebates for that. But I think most of the residential here, but we have a lot of rebates. We also have, our residential rebates and our commercial rebates, just our prescriptive rebates and air sealing and insulation and weatherization rebates and things like that. So we are gonna be sending out a brochure that kind of gives an overview of our RNC program. Any questions?
Thank you much. Unfortunately, ComEd couldn't be with us today, but we're going to be following up in the future with them on their programs. So we have that information as well for the builders. And at this point, I want to turn it over to our main speaker so that how we can get some money from the federal government, not just the utility. I've got our friends from Brayn Consulting, Austin, and Mr. Brady, come on in and do your thing. And they are, by the way, hosting a happy hour later today. For those of you who are in the city, I'll let you kind of tell them where it's going to be at, but it's going to be downtown at the recess. So if you want more after the program, talk to them.
Yes, please go. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that getting money from the federal government has passed baseball as America's past.
Yes.
So glad to help. Intro.
Yeah,
Brian.
is there an intro slide? Perfect.
I think so.
What about the next one?
So just intro.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here. I'm Brady. I'm the CEO of Brayn. I live in Las Vegas with my wife, 3 kids, and 3 French bulldogs. One of them just celebrated the birthday. The dogs, not the kids, this week. But we serve clients in all 50 states. A little bit about, I guess, me, originally from the Houston, Texas area, came out to LA to go to law school, became licensed to practice in California and Texas. And what do you do when you become licensed to practice law? Well, you go work in tax, of course. I mean, it made no sense at all. So I went to go work at Deloitte, where I learned the wonderful world of tax credits, and I had the wonderful opportunity to work with some public builders and public design and engineering and construction firms, and had a wonderful time there, but left in 2010 to start Brayn Consulting. And really one of our focuses here, we serve all kinds of clients, but one of the things that that we do really well is serving architecture, engineering, construction, and home building and development companies. So and we're going to be talking about some exciting things today. Nobody goes to a cocktail party and says, hey, we do tax credits. That's the easiest way to shut down a conversation. But the folks here I know are going to love it today.
Yeah. And then myself, I'm Austin. I am actually out of Austin, Texas, engineer by education. And then I've spent the last 5 years or so running Brayn's residential practice. So working on the 45L tax credit, which we're about to talk about, 179D, and some other tax incentives for builders and developers.
Austin is pretty modest. He won't mention this, but he just passed his professional engineering exam. So he's a few days away from being an official PE, I think. Where are you already?
Yeah, I got a, yep. So PE in HVAC refrigeration, also a HERS rater, Energy Star, certified for single family and multifamily. I guess that PE has an asterisk on it if the board is listening.
And then one of these other, one other thing that I would brag on, he from Austin, he went to high school and blocked for none other than Baker Mayfield. So if there's any Baker Mayfield fans.
Thank you, Brady. Yeah, and that, yeah. Grew up in Texas, school in Colorado, back to Texas, but been traveling all over. Love working with builders, love working with people in design and construction. It's been a lot of fun. A little bit about Brayn. As Brady mentioned, we started off as a tax consulting firm, mainly doing the research and development tax credits for architecture, engineers, construction. About 2014, 2015, we started getting involved in commercial energy efficiency incentives, and from there very quickly got into residential as well. So Brayn as a company, we're kind of split into three parts. We've got the building science consulting, which is the group that I'm with. We have our business tax services, so that's if anyone knows cost segregation, research and development, employee retention tax credits, and other tax issues. And then we have our tax audit resolution, where we work with our companies. We support all of our work all the way up through IRS appeals. If anything ever goes to audits, we have an in-house group that handles that.
If the IRS does cometh knocking, somebody has to answer the door.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, some uniques about Brayn, fixed fee. So we don't charge based on performance, just fixed fee. High expertise. So everyone that works at Brayn are ex-engineers or current engineers, ex-CPA, lawyers, etc. And then independency of service. Awesome. So what we want to talk about today, energy efficient tax incentives for builders, designers, everyone involved. We are going to talk in order the 45L tax credit, what it's been like historically, and the changes that happened last year as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. We're going to talk about its sister or brother incentive, 179D for commercial. And then at the end, we'll hit some high points on the investment tax credit and then some other tax incentives for the construction industry related to energy efficiency. And then after that, I know there was a bunch of questions about 45L and some of these programs, so we'll open it up for Q&A. Sound good? All right, 45L, it is, I think the full name is the New Energy Efficient Home Credit. A lot of these programs, we just refer to them by where they're located in the tax code. So I'm going to call it 45L for the rest of the presentation. It was signed into law in 2005. And the first year it was available was 2006. They kind of, every 2 or 3 years, they would extend the program. They just kick the can down the road. And then finally, last year, as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, they extended it out for 10 more years. So currently the program is available through the end of 2032. We're really hoping they're going to make it permanent, like some of these other programs. Historically, it has been a $2,000 tax credit per home, apartment, townhome, it's per unit, right? So it's a federal tax credit. It's available in all 50 states, general business credit. Unlike some of these other rebates where you'll just get a check for $200 or $500, however much, it's a tax credit. So it has to offset owed tax. So when you make money, the government takes their cut, then you can use these tax credits to get some of that money back. there's really two kind of programs. We call it Legacy 45L for anything before 2022 and the new 45L afterwards. So right now, any homes that were built in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022 are still eligible for this $2,000 credit. The window on 2019 is closing. As time goes on, next year will be 2020 and then 21, 22. And by the time we get to 27, this credit will be put up on the shelf. A lot of what we do now is working with builders who have never heard about this credit before, going back, helping them do any sort of testing, energy modeling, reviewing their drawings, anything we can to see if we can help them amend and claim this credit before time runs out.
So just a quick example of this, you have a home builder building 100 homes per year. Number one, you mentioned the Illinois building code. It's one of the toughest in the nation. I don't have to tell you all that. You already know. It's almost certainly going to pass this 2006 International Energy Conservation Code. And so you have to be 50% more efficient than that, 50% or better than that 2006 standard to hit this. So somebody building 100 homes per year, that could be, again, 2019, 2020, 21, 22, that's 400 homes. That's $800,000 in credits they could potentially go back and get.
That's right. For the video, if you couldn't hear that, the program, the requirements to claim the credit is you have to prove that the home is 50% or more efficient than a 2006 basically baseline. I mentioned earlier, they kicked the program down, like they kicked the can down the road every couple of years. From 2006 to 2022, no changes in what it takes to qualify. 50% or more efficient than 2006 IECC in 2006, it's a pretty high bar. In 2022, not very difficult, especially some in climate zone 5 in Illinois. So what we've seen is a lot of builders have been able to take this credit without really having to change anything, probably for work that they've already been doing. And like Brady said, $2,000 a home, you're selling a $400,000, $500,000 home, doesn't seem like that much. You start building production or you're doing multifamily or any kind of volume, it very quickly starts adding up. So eligible builders, of course, home builders, typically we see 15 homes a year, and north of that, that's when it starts making sense. There's a little bit of volume involved of having enough credit, offset the cost of doing studies and looking at it. Any sort of residential developers, so multifamily, anything before 2023, if it's a multifamily project, it needs to be 3 stories and under. That just has to do with how the IRS has defined commercial versus residential, whether or not that's what it's actually used for. Anything 4 stories and up, 4 stories above grade and up is considered commercial for this credit. So we see a lot of garden style apartments, townhomes, low-rise apartments, that kind of stuff. And then manufactured and mobile homes. There's actually a reduced credit for manufactured or mobile homes because typically the energy performance isn't as good, but it's still better than other manufactured homes. So there's a lower credit for that. Yeah, then in qualification, it needs to be certified by a third party, typically a HERS rater like myself. If anyone is familiar with the HERS rating system, you've probably dealt with raters. Go in, same people, same certification. There's similar to a HERS rating. It's not the same thing, which is something that we've come across quite a lot. So a lot of home builders, they'll have HERS scores of 55, 60, maybe it's up to 62. And they say, okay, I don't get to claim this credit. I think I have it on another slide. Highly encourage you to take another look, especially if you've already done all of the work, you've gotten the HERS rating done, you've done the inspection. You can go back and remodel the homes per the IRS's modeling guidelines, not necessarily the HERS modeling guidelines, to see if you qualify. And then at the very bottom, I don't know if it's going to show up on the video, there's an asterisk that's very important. You guys have to have basis in the home during its construction to qualify for this credit. So if you are a production home builder, you go out, you buy a bunch of land, or you're a multifamily developer and you own the property, or you're building townhomes or condos and you're owning them and selling them to people, you're good to go. If you're a custom home builder, and it's all fee-based. You don't actually own the project. It's, you're coming in as like a general contractor or designer. The credit might not apply to you. That's something that when you're looking into these programs, it's very important from the outset to understand like how you fit into this.
Also, fee builders are not gonna be able, because they won't have basis in the property.
Yeah.
But same coin, the other side, you can be a developer and not be building and hire a fee builder and be eligible for those.
That's right.
What defines a developer?
You bought the land, you're financing the deal.
Okay, highlights on the pre-2023 version of this credit. It's for homes closed before 2022, for open tax years is what we call it. Basically means, you know, current year -4, so 2019 to 2022 still open. $2,000 per home or apartment. You have to be 50% or more efficient than the 2006 IECC standard. And of that 50% efficiency, 10% has to come from the building envelope. So you can't just have like a, you know, an 18 SEER and a 96% AFUE furnace in there and then have R11 in your walls and call it good. Like it needs to be a holistic energy efficient house. So some of that has to come from the building envelope, which is something we determine when we're doing the energy calculations. There's more than one way to qualify. So that's, you get your HERS rating system. You've got your the calculation methods that we use. There's some other ones, maybe Cheers if you're in California, which shouldn't matter for anyone here, but important to explore your options. And again, if you look into the program in the past, these years are going away. If you check all the boxes and you qualify, it's essentially free money. Not free money, but
Also,
work that you've
I
already
think
done.
the only additional thing that I would highlight is if substantial renovation to apartments
That's right.
could potentially qualify. Not just new paint and raised rents, but that substantial renovation, new down to the studs type.
That's right. So for any of the programs I'm talking about today, substantial renovations are also included, but big underline under the word substantial. Like Brady mentioned, if you're putting in new cabinets and new carpet and all that, doesn't really matter. You need to be affecting the
New
HVAC.
lipstick won't count.
Right? Lipstick does not count. You need new HVAC, new building envelope, so maybe a roof replacement, new windows, tearing it down to studs, a pretty substantial renovation, but can still qualify. I know I said I was going to hold questions, but this seems like a good point. Does anyone have any questions on this pre-23 version?
Do you have that, you spoke about the checklist, you know, do you have like a checklist of things that are part of your presentation?
No, I do not. That would probably be
We have the CPA checklist, that might be helpful.
that might be helpful. I can hand out some stuff afterwards and talk
It's
about
like
it. But
for architects or engineers or contractors and what they're doing, potential incentives.
yeah, I think this is probably the best thing. Just to, if you had to screenshot something to look at, it'd be this of just where you know, where you fall on here. Does it make sense? So the biggest thing would be, you know, do you have cost basis in the properties or the projects during construction? That's a big one for custom home builders or semi-custom, or you know, some builders do half spec, half custom homes. That's an important thing to figure out. Do you owe enough tax, right? Where you got, most home builders are, but if you work with newer companies, maybe they're newer home builders, maybe they don't owe tax their first year or something like that, something to consider. Is there a volume of homes that makes sense, right? If you're doing 1 or 2 homes, by the time you go through all this, you amend your tax returns and all that, maybe you're gonna make $100 and it doesn't really make sense. But if you're building 100 homes, it really starts to add up. And then the multifamily side is a lot more of making sure that, yeah, original owner, because these credits go to the builder who originally owned the property and then sold it. 3 stories and under, are you going to be able to reach the ownership of that property? But for home builders, it's a little more straightforward. Any other questions?
Does anybody feel like this resonates with this?
So you say if you're a home builder, you can go back and collect money
Oh, yeah.
if you build?
It
So if you
requires
did like 50 homes a year, 2 years so we can go back and get that?
Yes, sir.
It depends on, so it would require you'd have to amend your tax returns, and then you'd submit that to the IRS. They, with your CPA, you fill out all the paperwork, they amend it, and then the IRS will do their work, and then you'll get a check back 6 to 8 months of a refund. Now, it's important, for those previous years, part of our work is that we go in and we see, okay, what documentation's available? Do you get HERS ratings done? Is there inspections? Do we need to come out now and verify the work that's being done today? Do we need to it's a little more complicated, but essentially, yes, you can very much go back and look, and we do that all the time for home builders that have never heard about the credit. They realize, hey, I should have been looking at this the whole time. You'd be surprised. I think nowadays more builders know about it. If you go on any top 50, top 100 builder, they're probably claiming this on a good number of their homes. You got any of the public
Yeah, go to
home builders?
their 10Ks and do a search on their 10K for tax credits. They get hundreds of millions of dollars per year.
But even then, we've worked with top 50 builders back in 2015. They'd never heard of the credit.
That's right.
They've been building 1,000 homes a year, and then they go in and they find out that all their buddies have been doing it, not telling them. So it's you'd be surprised. Okay, any other questions?
Would public housing qualify too for this? I know that they have other tax credits too that they apply for.
Define and.
Yeah.
Would
Like
it be,
income qualified public housing.
Like low income housing
is
tax
it
credits?
owned by a private company or is it financed? So if it's owned by a private joint venture developer, then they could be potentially eligible.
Yeah. So the question was, does public housing qualify? And the answer is it really depends on who owns the public housing. Something that, again, probably should have mentioned, just because we were talking more home builders, but for multifamily developments, if anyone's ever heard of the low income housing tax credit, before 2023, it butts heads with this 45L credit. Don't want to get too deep into the tax, but you have to reduce the cost basis in these properties to take the credit. The low income housing tax credit is based off of cost basis, so these two things kind of butt heads and cancel out. As we'll go over in a moment, going into 2023, you can stack low income housing tax credits on top of all these energy efficient options and make a pretty big tax present, if you want to call it.
Here's a question that we do, and I don't know if everybody does it this way, but I tried doing it a couple of years back, and my accountant told me I could not qualify. So we set up a company that holds the land. At the time of the closing, that company would transfer the land to Camelot Homes, call it our building company. And then at that same day, that deed gets transferred to the homeowner. So I was told at one point that he didn't qualify. Is that the way, because we have a whole land holding company that we're not?
I don't see that as being a prohibition because ultimately the way the IRS would view your company is as a control who controls that company. It's time for you to Camelot, right? Yes. So you look at it as a control group.
I was gonna say, do you own both?
Well, it's the same ownership of the two companies, it's just different. We do it for protection.
Okay. So yeah, that's for legal liability reasons, but the overall control is asserted by the same owners in Camelot. So the credits be flowing up to y'all anyway on your cable.
So for the video, the question was if they have let's say you have a home builder and they have another company under the same ownership that holds the land just to protect the home building company, does that disallow you from taking these credits or does it cause complications? The answer is one, these credits will flow up through the ownership to the owners of the company. It's usually split based on ownership. Sometimes you have operating agreements, what have you, but those credits can still flow up to the same people.
So that should be a prohibition at all.
Any other questions? Awesome.
Austin, what about inspections? So if we have potentially prior errors or lower door tests or prior inspections, going back in time, we can potentially rely on some of those.
Yep, so if you've done HERS ratings in the past, you've done, admittedly, I'm not as familiar with some, maybe the local testing requirements in Illinois, but I know in Texas, especially where I live in Austin, it's required to have a HERS rating on every home. We're able to use those testing results to help verify what was installed, the HVAC, you've got your blower door results, your duct leakage, and that can really cut down on the workload to do these studies and really help expedite and give a substantial amount of proof of the work that you've done. Okay, so we stay on track a little bit. I'm going to talk about for the new 45L credit as of really this year as part of the Inflation Reduction Act.
So this, I would just say really quick, Austin, this was really controversial. We saw this coming about 3 years ago because it was so easy to pass the energy standard for the prior 45 was a 2006 IECC standard. And we've only come across very few folks. Some builders in Missouri had a tough time because they have no building code there. Most people with state building codes were passing this with flying colors. Well, the IRS got wise to that. And rather than just raise the bar, they ended up picking a winner. I heard somebody mention Passive House earlier. That's a great program. There's Earth Advantage, there's Earthcraft, there's all sorts of programs out there. But rather than just raise the bar, they picked a winner, which is Energy Star.
That's right. So as I mentioned earlier, 2006 IECC code, really not that difficult in 2022 and in 2023. So as part of the Inflation Reduction Act last year, very much overdue, the powers that be overhauled the program. So now, instead of it being a 50% qualification or energy performance qualification, now all homes and apartments and any sort of unit that wants to claim this credit needs to be certified under the Energy Star program. So that's a single family, the single Energy Star single family new home program. For single family homes, the multifamily new construction program. For multifamily, there is a modular home / manufactured home version, and then there's also a substantial renovation version. Basically, anything that you're building, if it's residential, it's got to flow through the Energy Star program now to get these credits. I guess just as a pulse check, who here is familiar with Energy Star, has looked at it in the past? Okay, awesome, one person.
It's not a high bar.
Yeah.
They ask you to do a lot of things, but it's not a high bar.
Yeah, it's not nearly as high as Passive House. It's not net zero, but for some of these production builders, especially in the South, where a lot of this production building is happening, a lot of them have not been held to this kind of standard yet. So getting them up to speed, especially if you're a builder that's building a couple hundred homes a year, you got a big ship you got to turn. You're trying to get everything up to Energy Star standard. Just going over the credit, what it gives you at a, yep.
That's not the same as Illinois or like home performance with Energy Star, right? This is a new construction.
This is a
version of
new
it.
construction for home builders and apartment developers. So just going over the credit amounts, because this has changed as well. Previously, across the board, $2,000 per home or apartment with a $1,000 manufactured home builder for lower qualification. See that in the second column. Now, there's a wider range of credits. And I'm going to talk about single family, and then I'm going to talk about multifamily. For single family, for Energy Star, it's now $2,500 per home, which is great. It's also been extended through the end of 2032, and by the time we get there, we fully expect another overhaul of the program. Hopefully it's made permanent. There's also, I don't believe it, it's on the last column, there's now a $5,000 option for Zero Energy Ready. Zero Energy Ready, it's essentially Energy Star and then some more. So it's all of the Energy Star requirements. You have to be certified under Energy Star. There's some higher performance requirements on top of that. You also need to have all of the AC in the conditioned space. There's some water sense, filtration and faucet requirements. There's, I'm forgetting the name of it. There's some clean air requirements. It's essentially Energy Star with some extra on top of it. And the
All
biggest
electric
thing,
too, right?
all electric, and the biggest thing is that
Solar
you
ready.
don't need solar, you need to be solar ready. So you need the conduits up on the roof, you need the extra framing to support solar panels. You don't have to add them, but you need the option that a homeowner could come in later and put in the panels and not have to do any more construction. So that's a $5,000 option. Right now, what we're seeing with a lot of builders, kind of what we're recommending almost is, let's get you to Energy Star, at least on paper, and make sure that maps out. And then Zero Energy Ready is like the next level on top of that. If you can't build Energy Star, you can't build Zero Energy Ready. And that's for single family. On the multifamily side, same deal. There's the $2,500 option and the $5,000 option for Energy Star and Zero Energy Ready, respectively. And now, there's a lot going on. Now, there's no longer a height limit on multifamily buildings. Previously, it was 3 stories and under. Now, there's no height limit. You can do high rises, you can do 2-story, and everything in between. We've worked on some projects that are, just 2-floor, 30-unit buildings, and we've worked on 300 or 400-unit high-rise buildings. Everything qualifies now.
Austin's even working on some that don't exist yet. So you talk about the designer.
Yeah, and then there's a whole bunch of incentives and programs involved with the multifamily stuff on the high rise. Something that we found very popular with those developers is the design to earn program. So essentially, we can take when you're still in the design phase, maybe you haven't broken ground yet. These high rise projects take 3 or 4 years to do. We can go in and do all the energy modeling and all of the paperwork ahead of time, submit it to the EPA and their appointed reviewers, and get approval for the building way ahead of time that this design, as designed, will meet Energy Star. And then all you have to do is go out and do the testing and that kind of stuff.
Anybody have any thoughts on why that would be important to do?
Well, you have to do the energy modeling up front to make sure it's gonna work after you build it.
That's right.
That's right, but
It
one of
also,
the reasons is, 2 reasons. Number one, you gotta create your perspective to get the investors in there, right? So you need money. That's number one, where do you get that money? Number two, if I mentioned affordable housing, if you're getting HUD money and participate in the PACE program, you can reduce your basis points significantly. In fact, that you'll save probably more in the loan than any of the rebates or tax credits combined.
Yep.
Probably. I'm not a financial expert here for tax guys. This is just what some of our builders tell us.
yeah. So to wrap up the multifamily side, big potential money there. There is, if you've noticed, 2 very nice asterisks. The first one being that with a lot of these federal programs, there are now prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements for anything commercial or near commercial. So these requirements don't apply to single family homes or townhomes, but any sort of multifamily projects, multifamilies being defined as there's 1 unit on top of another unit. So townhomes don't qualify, but if you have a 2-story where there's a unit on the first floor and a unit on the second floor, that's considered multifamily. You have to meet prevailing wage requirements to get the full credit amount. If you don't meet those prevailing wage requirements, cut the credit by 80%. It goes down to $500 and then $1,000. Prevailing wages, it's complicated, but essentially, if anyone deals with HUD or does any government work, you're probably familiar with it. It's just,
It's required, yeah.
Brady, do you want to elaborate a bit on prevailing wages?
Yeah, so it's not usually an issue. Well, I can't imagine any multifamily being an issue in Illinois. It's probably almost certainly going to be union shop, foreman, so.
But they, basically the federal government has laid out, basically by region, by city, by trade, by type of work, what their prevailing wage is, and that's wage plus benefits.
You can just go to sam.gov and it'll spell it out by your region.
Yep. And so this has been a little bit more complicated on the multifamily side. If you're doing low income housing work, if you're doing anything HUD finance, you have to do it anyway, and you have to be energy efficient. So it's pretty much a slam dunk. but for some more private market rate developers, people building, their 40 unit properties that they're just holding by themselves, it has been something that we have to look into. Based on where you are, if you're in Illinois, if you're building in Chicago, you might be fine. If you're building, 3 hours west of Austin in the middle of nowhere in Texas, you're probably getting lucky if you get paid at all. So something to consider. And we don't have to prove the energy rating company doesn't have to prove that you're meeting prevailing wages. You don't even need to provide a certified payroll or anything, but you will have to prove that to the IRS if they ever want to test you on if you've been paying that. Okay, a lot of stuff on here. 6 or so different amounts of credits now moving forward. Does anyone have any questions on the dollar amount and how those flow out? So after that, I'm gonna talk about Energy Star and the program requirements and what that looks like.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did the definition of multifamily change from prior to 2023, or is it the same across the board? That it can't be a townhome, it has to be a unit on top of another unit?
There was no definition of multifamily previously. It was as long as the property was 3 stories and under above grade.
So if you started building in 2022, it would still technically qualify?
No, so that's a good point. There's a big ugly gray zone at the first part of this year where a bunch of these projects are not qualifying. So very good question. So originally this, the credit was supposed to be extended in December of 2021. There was some congressional tomfoolery, we'll say, and they didn't get it passed until August of 2022, giving all of the builders and developers about 3 months notice that they now have to be building Energy Star, and anything that wasn't built Energy Star, they weren't going to get their money that they were planning on. Super cool. Now there's a bunch of projects that a multifamily development that maybe they started building in late 21, and now they're wrapping up in the beginning of 23, and now they don't get any credits because they didn't build it to Energy Star because that wasn't the rule at the time. We're hoping maybe some kind of IRS guidance comes out and like grandfathers some buildings into the program. That has not happened yet. If it does, everyone here is going to be getting a phone call from me about homes being built during that period. But as of right now, no, I have it on the next slide, but previously it was a look backwards program. Let's grade your homework after you've turned it in. Let's see where you land. Now it's like, I like to say we have to help you study. We have to be involved during design, really before slab goes down, that we need to be having these conversations, both on the single family side and on the multifamily side. But to answer your first question, there was no real requirement, just had to be 3 stories and under. Now there's different Energy Star programs for multifamily, single family, et cetera.
And your multifamily has to be one on top of another, it can't be 2 side by side.
No, that'd be a townhome, and we can do it under single family, which we want to do because we don't have to worry about prevailing wages.
Gotcha, okay.
So townhomes can actually go under either program, whichever we get to choose.
Okay.
Questions?
I saw a hand raised.
That was my question, actually, where is it?
Yeah, so by definition, like literally in the single family and in the multifamily, it both includes townhomes. It says you get to choose. Their definition is if it's 1 unit from slab to sky, that's a townhome. If there's 1 unit on top of another unit, that's considered multifamily.
Austin, can you talk a little, I don't know if I'm getting off subject here, but can you talk about the shared wall on quadplexes, townhomes, and the like?
What capacity?
Like why that's tougher on the energy model? It defies common sense.
Yeah, we can. Yeah. So there's historically there's been an issue with not an issue, but it's been difficult to qualify certain townhomes or quadplexes, duplexes, that kind of stuff under the old program. The way that the energy modeling software that we have to use per the IRS works is that if you have a shared wall, like the middle wall between a duplex, that has to be labeled what we call adiabatic, meaning that there's no temperature difference between the unit we're modeling and the unit that's next door. So when it goes into the energy modeling software, it treats it as though there's 0 heat transfer across that wall. Same thing with the roof and the floor. If you're in a multifamily unit, And when we have to prove that the home is more efficient than a 2006 standard, and we've just lost, it's a middle unit, we just lost 2 walls, it makes it a lot harder to do that. But now we get to use the Energy Star program, and the modeling programs are different and the requirements are different. It's been easier to, not easier, now those townhomes are actually more realistically like representing their energy performance.
I have a question.
Sure.
When are they supposed to have the Energy Star version 3.2 guidance out for 25?
So it is, let's see, 3.1 is out. Let's see, 3.2 is out. They have it on the National Program Requirement website. The thing that they're doing right now is I think the states are going through and figuring out what exactly they want to do. So there's a national program. Most of the states will just say, yeah, we're good with that, whatever you guys say. And certain states, Florida, California, Oregon, New York maybe, there's one other one. They'll have their own programs that are typically more strict than the national programs, but it's still like the programs are out. You can go find the guidance, which is something we want to talk about in the Q&A. We can. I have it put up on my phone to go through. But yeah, that you just go to the Energy. I think you just Google Energy Star program requirements. If you go to their website, it'll either be on the right-hand side or you scroll all the way to the bottom, and it'll say version 3.2 requirements. And really, the only difference between 3.2, 3.1, and 3.0 is that the performance half of Energy Star is harder, which kind of brings me into the next slide. We're going to talk about the Energy Star program and what that is and what it means. Cool. Okay. Energy Star. So who here has heard of Energy Star when it comes to like appliances, light bulbs, thermostats? Okay, everyone's raising their hands. There's a whole lot more involved in that. A lot of times when I approach builders who have never heard about the program and they go, no, we're doing Energy Star. Really? Yeah, we buy the dishwashers, we buy the refrigerators, we're doing it. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Energy Star new construction. So it is put on by the EPA. It is their darling. There's 3 major parts to Energy Star as described by the EPA. There's complete thermal enclosure system, complete heating and cooling system, and complete water management system. I like to say there is 3 parts, but my 3 parts don't look like this. I say there's paperwork, there's performance, and then there's prescription, right? So there's performance in that we have to do an energy model of the home similar to a HERS rating. Based on your location, the type of home that you're building, that model performance metric kind of floats. But generally, you're seeing anywhere from a HERS score of 58 to 61, and that's your 3.1 requirement. I guess who here is familiar with the HERS system? Yep. Okay, so a HERS score, ResNet, I think, is the group that put it on. It's essentially a score that measures how energy efficient your house is versus, I think it's the 2006 or just the national average. 100, a score of 100 means you're perfectly average. A score of 90 means you're 10% more efficient. 80 is 20, 70 is 30, so on and so forth. You can even get a negative HERS score if you have if you're generating your own energy. So 58 to 61 is kind of the score range for Energy Star 3.1. When we get to 3.2, you're looking at 49 to 52. It's a pretty big jump in performance. So the first thing we have to do for Energy Star, we take your plans, take all your specifications, your drawings, we do essentially a virtual HERS rating on them. We tell you what your energy performance is. You have to meet that first benchmark. From there, we have prescriptive requirements. So it's not enough just to be building the HERS score of 56 or whatever to qualify. There's prescriptive requirements. The biggest ones being air sealing. I'm really wishing I dropped that slide in. Air sealing, so you need to be having a nice tight house. You need fully aligned air barriers. You need grade 1 insulation. You need to be sealing around doors and windows, all the good stuff to reduce that air leakage. And then the other really big one that hits a lot of builders is reduced thermal bridging. So thermal bridging is an idea that essentially if you have a wall and the wall is made up of insulation, It's made up of wood and studs. It's made up of pipe and wires and all kinds of stuff, right? Those all have different levels of thermal resistance, R value, U value, whatever you want to call it. When you have a wall that has a whole bunch of wood, it's got a whole bunch of pipe, it's got a whole bunch of electrical components, not a lot of room for insulation, it's not going to be a very energy efficient wall. The idea of thermal bridging is to reduce the amount of non-insulation or increase the amount of insulation so you don't have little gaps where the heat can flow through. There's two real ways to do that. You can either add continuous insulation to the outside or inside of the house, spray foam, zip board with like R3 continuous or R6 continuous on the outside, or advanced framing techniques. I just word vomited a lot of information. Any questions on that kind of stuff? Is that right?
You're right.
Okay, cool. So yeah, the biggest prescriptive requirements for Energy Star, again, is just proper air sealing, which is just something that more custom home builders, smaller builders usually do a pretty good job on. When you start getting up to production size and in areas that don't require it, some people get a little lazy. So it's good for the home builder, or it's good for the homeowner, but it's something that they're probably not up to doing. And then reduced thermal bridging, mainly being advanced framing techniques, which would include California corners. You guys are familiar with that term. It's just making sure you have insulation in the corners of the home. Ladder blocking, where interior walls meet exterior walls. Insulated headers over doors and windows when available and applicable. And then just reducing the amount of redundant lumber around, just for framing the house. You guys have ever walked a property or walked a job site, you see like 6 or 7 pieces of wood in a row, like by a window or a door. That is the opposite of reduced thermal bridging. There's no insulation there. The hope would be that we can go in and, where available, intelligently frame this stuff to maximize the amount of insulation. So that's probably the biggest hurdle I see working with builders to get to this level, outside of just saying, hey, you might have to switch out your AC unit. You might need to go to from an 80, AFU 80 to a 92, and making sure the math works out there. And then the final part of that I said was paperwork, right? There's a bunch of inspections. So it's kind of similar to if anyone's had HERS ratings done on their homes, but we have to come out at least twice, sometimes 3 times. There's like 2 visual inspections, and then there's 2 tests that we have to run. So we'll come out at framing, and we'll do a framing inspection to make sure that advanced framing's being done, you're sealing where you're supposed to, everything looks good. We come out right before drywall comes up. We have to see the insulation be installed, make sure it's grade 1. And usually we have to, at that point, we'll test for duct leakage at rough-in. So we'll do a duct leakage test, and then we come out at final, we do another walkthrough to make sure everything looks okay, and we do just a final blower door test. Every time we go out, we have paperwork that we have to fill out, a whole bunch of checklists from the EPA. Your rater compiles all that information, they submit it to the EPA or whoever the governing body is, and then you guys get a certificate. At the end of the year, file all your certificates, get your tax bill. Questions? I know it's a very high level, and I encourage you, if you're interested in Energy Star, come talk to us, talk to your local rater that you're working with already. It's very much whatever works for you, whatever works for your builder, we can come in and do more of a custom solution, because not every builder works the same. Not every builder's obviously in like different climates, different states, different cities are going to have easier ways to hit these benchmarks. What works in, north of Chicago is not going to work, south of San Antonio. So, question? Yeah.
So the HERS rating is just done so you could submit it to get it approved? That you don't necessarily need the HERS rating, or could you do like a BPI person could do it, or somebody else, or?
So you need to be, the rater that is doing it needs to be Energy Star certified. So they have another certification. So for example, I got my HERS rater license, and then afterwards I got my Energy Star single and multifamily. They are like The Venn diagram is basically just a circle, like of how close they are. The work looks exactly the same. There's just some extra steps. You don't have to necessarily use the HERS system to meet the performance requirements, but there's an energy rating index that you have, like when you model the stuff in the programs, you can select which program you want to meet. And then based on whatever building performance metric you want to use, you have to beat the Energy Star version. So the HERS rating is just the most common example. It's the one most people use. If you are like a BPI certified or a HERS rater certified, but you're not Energy Star certified, you can't do it.
So you can just be Energy Star certified.
Yeah. Questions? Awesome. And then I know we'll probably talk about it in the Q&A. There is the last one, which is on this complete heating and cooling system, is that there is required mechanical fresh air ventilation. That's probably the last big hurdle that some builders have not been doing, especially in the South. Okay, so 2023 and onwards, big takeaways. The new version with Energy Star is only for homes closed 2023 and afterwards. It's $2,500 to $5,000 for a single family home, $500 to $5,000 for an apartment. You have to be certified under the Energy Star program or under the Zero Energy Ready program. There's a whole bunch of different programs available. Could be from townhome, single family, multifamily, high rise. You just need to explore whatever you're building. And then this is now a look forward program. So you need to be having these conversations. If you're doing multifamily, when you're still in design, if you're doing townhomes, when you're still in design, if you're doing single family homes, you're a production builder, you need to be having these conversations about the homes you want to be building in like 6 to 8 months. You need to have those conversations now.
And then also now's the time to be thinking about the rebates. I think there's one other thing you kind of find out about is potential rebates back to the board, right?
That's right.
We found in a lot of jurisdictions, for example, where Duke Energy is, some Ohio, the Carolinas, they have upwards. Our builders there get typically anywhere between $1,400 to $9,000 per home in rebates.
That's right.
So it's significant.
Yeah, so you
And
can
then
stack these.
on $2,500 in tax credits. Yep. But you're right, you know, this is that part where you analyze every $1,000 increase in cost of the home. You know, another thing, do we have any bankers here? That would be nice. As I understand, there's at least 3 financial instruments out there that borrowers can look at where it's Energy Star and they can get a better deal. I think the VA has one particular instrument. I know Fannie has another instrument. I was told by some bankers at a builder show that there's other instruments as well. And what they can do is increase their buying power and ultimately reduce their monthly cost and utilities.
That's right. They have energy efficient mortgages. I'm forgetting now exactly where it fits more for new construction. They have ones for renovations and that kind of work. But you go talk to your lenders about energy efficient mortgages and see if that's something that you can work with your clients or your homeowners on.
You're saying that's available to the end user?
Yes.
So my customers, let's say the rate is 7%, they may be able to take advantage of 6.5, right?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, hypothetically.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to wrap our heads around some of these programs. That would be good to partner with a banker that could educate your buyers. Not that they would have to use them, but hey, here's some programs.
Yes.
I think the best thing you can do is just sort of ask your banker, like, do you guys have any sort of energy efficient mortgage options? And then you need help, we can help see how you can actually pitch that to y'all's clients.
Well, another thing, being a local and regional builder, you can actually have an upper hand on pricing compared to the national builders. I'll tell you why. What Austin and I are finding going to these conferences, what's the one gentleman in DC we met, and he does that spray foam interior.
I know who you're talking about, I can't remember his name.
And he said you wouldn't believe these national builders, they're doing the prescriptive path to Energy Star. said, they're paying anywhere from $7,000 to $12,000 per home to get it there, just because it's 300% over engineered. It's way more than you need. And so by doing it this way in a performance pad, you can get what you need and actually have a more affordable home.
How much does that cost to have somebody come in and do that?
It depends. We have some readily available models and some models that folks can look at. I think that we charge some clients, we do it for free because they've been long-term clients, but I think in general it may be, I don't know what, couple of thousand per model.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. So I guess it's a question, how much does it take to evaluate, to get the energy star, or how much for someone to come in and do all of the spray
Right.
foam?
How much does it cost for somebody to actually do it, and like how much are you gonna get from that?
So to physically do it, so there's a couple things. There's getting the specs up to that level. I know we heard earlier about like how much of an increase in the cost of the home to meet certain requirements. It really depends on the builder. I've talked with builders who it's, hey, you need to, if you start sealing around the bottom plate, you're at Energy Star, you're good to go. I've talked with other builders and it's like, we need to talk again in 5 to 10 years because it's gonna cost you 50 grand a home, because you're building in areas with basically no code. So it's really dependent on every builder's different. But, and it also, it's dependent on where they are, right? So they know their supply costs better than we do. The thing that we can do is we can provide very prescriptive, like this is generally what builders in your area are having to meet to qualify for Energy Star, or we'll look through what they've already been building. They'll send us over their specifications for the homes they're building today, and we can do a quick model and run it through the program and let you know, like, okay, you're at 62, you need to be at 59. These are the changes that we would recommend, and here's 3, 4, 5 options. And then we work, it's a consultative approach to work with them and figure out like what actually does make the most sense for you all, because they know they have the home builders are going to have a lot more information on the costs and where they get
That
their
would be a
supplies
gap
from.
analysis, but that's what I thought you were asking was.
Yeah.
Doing the analysis.
Yeah, more like how much would it cost to just get the testing done?
So to actually come out and yeah. So after they've decided that, okay, we want to do Energy Star, we're good to go. To get all of the testing requirements, it's based on volume, but I think for us it's usually between $600 and $800, and that's everything, all the inspections, all of the paperwork, and then also supporting the work after it's been done, doing the tax credits and the audit support and all that.
And you have to test each house, even though like say they're built exactly the same, you still have to test each house.
So you can do, there are sampling protocols that you can do on some multifamily projects, but so there are some sampling protocols you can do if you're doing like a subdivision, like a big subdivision, a big townhome project. But if you're using Energy Star to also meet code compliance, like some areas allow, you cannot use sampling outside of like maybe Arizona.
And the same thing, some utilities, so Arizona, for example, APS, they don't allow sampling in order to obtain the rebates.
Yeah, that's right.
So you have to do 100%.
Yep.
I might have missed this, but let's say you are building a house that's up to the 2021 IECC code. Would you almost be at Energy Star?
Usually at that point, it's not a performance issue, it's a prescriptive issue. Like we need to make sure that you're sealing the things that need to be sealed, you're framing correctly, you're an Energy Star partner and you fill out the paperwork. If you're building to 2021, at least with version 3.1, you're on like the 5-yard line. You're almost there. If you're building 2012, we got some work to do.
A little bit more, Austin, can you go into the process? So we actually, and not being salesy here, but just the practical, you would need to go in and really kind of coach the team up to stuff. There's a lot of consulting going on. Can you talk a little bit about? So the builder would need to be Energy Star certified. That would be the first thing, and also his subs. His subs was really kind of ceased to be subs. Her subs, you kind of create partners with these guys. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's not just enough that like it's designed well and that the builder is on board, like the home building company is on board with Energy Star. The subs also take a very active role in this. That framing, talked about earlier, you need a framer who understands advanced framing practices and has done it before, or you have to be willing to kind of hold their hand, coach them up on how to do these advanced framing practices, because you can't reframe a house once it's framed, it's done. Same thing with your HVAC subs. They need to be, there's some small certification that they may need to get based on how you want to go about the program. They're going to have to be commissioning this stuff, filling out paperwork. They need an internal QA process. So something to consider that's on the prescriptive side is making sure that the subs are also on board, not just the home builder. You can't drag the home across the Energy Star line. It's kind of a team effort.
And it's the framers, it's insulation.
Yep.
As well as your mechanical.
Yep,
contract.
everyone. Okay, going off from here, we're going off of 45L. So if anyone has any other questions on the 45L program, new one, old one, Energy Star.
Well, we'll be around at the happy hour too. Talk about it.
Okay, so I know we didn't have a time limit, but I think we're okay.
We have a few minutes.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about some commercial incentives. So I know it says commercial. This is for really anything that's not a home or a townhome. So if you're building multifamily projects, these will not qualify. Or if they qualify for this, and they can qualify for 45L. So you can stack all the stuff I'm about to talk about themselves. So 179D, we kind of call it the sister, brother, whatever you want to call it, version of 45L. It is the it's the energy efficient commercial building deduction, also called 179D. It is for commercial buildings. So if you're building a warehouse, like flex office spaces, you're building office buildings, you're building any sort of commercial building, you can get up to $5 per square foot as a tax deduction for your energy efficient design building. So a tax credit versus the deduction. A deduction lowers your taxable income that your owed tax is calculated off of. The tax credit offsets just the amount of tax that you owe. Typically, dollar for dollar, tax credits are much more powerful, about 3 times more powerful than a deduction. But at $5 a square foot, you can get a lot of tax deductions for bigger buildings. So it was designed for, this program was designed for privately owned commercial buildings. If anyone's familiar, I don't want to get too into the tax weeds, but if anyone's familiar with cost segregation or accelerated depreciation, mechanically it operates in the same way. It allows you to accelerate the depreciation of the property that you own. Another thing that we're not going to get too into here because it doesn't really pertain as much, but it's not just available to the owners of commercial property. It's also available to architects, MEPs, general contractors that work on government projects and non-tax-paying entities. Some pictures.
Anybody want to know more about that?
If you talk about briefly.
Yeah, I'll go briefly over it. Okay, so this is, I know it's a lot, but like a lot of these programs, they change over time. These are the different rates that you can get for using the 179D program. Prior to 2022, you just had to be 50% or more efficient than the ASHRAE 2007 standard. If you were, you'd get between $1.80 and $1.88 per square foot as a tax deduction. Going into 2023 through 2026, it's the same energy code, 2007, not hard to beat. And now there's a sliding scale. So it's from 25% to 50%, and then you can earn from $2.50 up to $5 per square foot. So if you have let's say you're building an office building that you own, it's 100,000 square feet, you can get $500,000 as a tax deduction for the work that you're already doing. If you were which I'll talk about in a moment, if you were a designer, like an architect, and you were designing school, it's a 200,000 square foot high school, you can get $1 million in tax deductions for that project that you worked on. It's a little more involved for the designer part, but the benefit is still there. And then after 2027, they're raising the energy performance benchmark to the 2019 standard. Mentioned it earlier, and I said it was going to come up again, prevailing wage and apprenticeship. So for projects moving forward for all these programs on any sort of commercial buildings, there's prevailing wage requirements. And then specifically for 179D and the investment tax credit we'll talk about in a second, there's apprenticeship requirements. I took out the slide that goes into them detail, but essentially a certain percentage of your workforce needs to be apprenticeship. The subs that you use have to have apprenticeship have apprenticeship programs. Certain states and cities are making these mandatory already. So this is something that we evaluate when we're looking at the project. What kind of sub, who is working on this when you were building it, if you own it. If you're working on government stuff, we look at how are you paying people? Do you have the apprenticeship set up? If you do, much bigger benefit.
Typically, if you're on, like, let's look at it like an industrial building.
Yep.
So the whole goal is to make the envelope more efficient.
Yep.
I mean, increase insulation. I was told that radiant heat through the floor does not qualify. Is that true?
You need some sort of like central heating, or not central, but you need some kind of dedicated heating or cooling system. So typically radiant heat, haven't seen it qualify. And the program is really designed for building envelope, HVAC, and lighting. As like those are your main three things that are looked at during the energy modeling. So typically radiant.
Radiant heat be your HVAC?
Yeah, it would need to be something that we'd look at on project by project. And admittedly, I'm really good on 45L, but the 179D, I'm not as up to snuff. But we could look at it, take a look. It's definitely worth a second opinion on. Any questions? Okay, cool. Takeaway. Okay, biggest thing to take away on here, commercial property, if you own it, there's potentially really big deductions. Anything where construction was started before the end of January this year, there's a small window of grace period where you don't have to worry about this prevailing wage stuff. So if you have any projects or know of any projects from anyone they had broken ground and gotten started before the end of January, they can go for that full $5 without having to worry about this prevailing wage stuff. But anything that's been started since then, we'll have to take a look at, see where they fall on this table.
So the big look at, okay, that slide, that's really the big play there, right? Looking for architects, mechanical, electrical, engineers, GC, specialty subs, and builders.
Yeah, so this is what we mentioned earlier. If you have an MEP, you have an architect, GC, any of these subs who are working on buildings owned by non-tax-paying entities, they can also claim this deduction. There's a few more steps involved. You need to reach out, but it's something to consider and bring up with your CPA or your local tax incentive expert.
City, state, county, federal, right?
Yep.
Churches?
Churches,
You do any church work?
any of that.
Yeah.
YMCA's.
Yep. So essentially, right, they came out with this program. It's commercial energy efficiency building deductions. Well, you have a privately owned or a publicly owned college or a high school, right? And they have this energy efficient building, but they don't pay taxes. So what they can do is give or allocate, it's the key word in the law, that deduction to a qualified designer that worked on the project. So if you're the architect on the church, what we can do is go talk to the church, explain what's going on, and they can sign an allocation letter and hand over that deduction to the architect that worked on the project, and they just take it as an additional deduction on their tax return for the amount calculated based off the energy efficiency. Same thing if you're an MEP, if you're another approved sub that worked on schools, really anything on this list. And really the ticket is you have to be involved in the design of the building. So if you're a contractor and you're just installing light bulbs, probably not gonna qualify. If you're helping do the electrical design and picking out the LEDs and you're doing the, you know, picking out the timers and all that kind of stuff, you might be able to qualify for at least a piece of it. And this is just a case study of you know, someone that we worked with some more round numbers.
Schools are the most common, you
Yeah.
see, right?
Yeah, for any sort of designer, schools are the most common, but, you know, scratch out public school, put in, you know, storage facility, if you guys are building or owning anything, you can see really quickly how much, or how quickly these deductions can add up. 150,000 square foot building, you know, placed in service this past summer, a couple months ago, could be $750,000 in deductions, which is pretty powerful. Okay, I'm gonna very quickly go through this. It's very new and very complicated, but the investment tax credit, it's been around for a long time. Essentially, there's this tax credit for building owners and sometimes even designers, or if you're installing renewable energy property, so solar, wind, geothermal, energy storage, and a whole bunch of other options, you can now get a percentage of the cost of that property back as a tax credit. You can even, I believe, sell those tax credits or transfer them to other groups. So it's gotten very complicated. It's a lot more on the multifamily side and a lot more on the large commercial building side, but this is definitely just a screenshot and reference later. If you're doing any kind of renewable work on any sort of commercial stuff, ask about the investment tax credit. If you're looking into 179D, you're looking into any of these other energy efficiency incentives, bring up the investment tax credit and then get someone to run a calculation and see if it's worth it for you. It could be as low as, you know, really, yeah, as low as 2% of the cost. It can be as high as 70% of the cost of that solar, geothermal, energy storage, like any of this. It can be up to 70% of that cost you get back as a tax credit, which can really, you know, help make some of these deals work.
Maximum size is 1 megawatt.
Yeah, this is again, I'm the 45L expert, but yeah, 1 megawatt. It's based on, you know, the size of the building, the amount of the energy that's being generated or stored. There's also requirements for, you know, are you in a low income neighborhood? Is this a city that has historically relied on coal or gas? Is this opportunity zone? There's a whole bunch of different kind of requirements that you go through and you add it up and you get to find out at the end how much you can get back. But the key takeaway is if you're doing any kind of work, commercial buildings with renewables involved, ask about the investment tax credit. Okay, any quick questions on the investment tax credit?
I have a quick question. I want to go back a little bit backwards though. On the commercial, you said as long as it started, so I think it was 2022, you said, as long as it started. What if it started, stopped, and now it's starting again, like there was a redesign in the middle? Where would that fall? Would that fall on the previous start date or the new start date with the new design?
So it's based, most of these, the only thing that's based on start date is the prevailing wage requirement. Everything else is based on place and service.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about then. So like, let's say I had a project started in 2022, we did the demo, we stopped because there was a redesign and now we're restarting. Where would my start date be? Would it be the original start date of the demo or would it be the new start date of the redesign?
I believe it would be the original start date of the demo.
Okay.
That's something that we can,
Okay.
well, we'd make sure before anyone starts getting too excited, but yeah, I believe it would be the start date of that demo.
Okay.
The question was if they had a project where they started the demo for the commercial building in 2022, then there was a pause and a redesign, and then they continued work again in mid 2023, would that be prevailing wage or not? They need to worry about it.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I want to say yes, that you're good to go, but it's something that we make sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Niagara Gas has a combined heat and power program.
Yeah.
Saw that on there.
Yeah, same thing like with these renewables, right? It's like all these programs, it's really cool if you get money back from the federal government. It's really, really cool when you get federal, state, city, utility provider, all those stack them together. So as you're going through these and evaluating projects, and maybe you're looking at like the new codes coming out, okay, is now the time that we want to make the jump to Energy Star? All these things need to be in that kind of conversation, because you'd be surprised how much money's out there. And Brady, how much money was set aside by the IRA to help push forward these like codes and
Over $1 billion.
yeah, there's $1 billion just to help like.
So what that's gonna be done, so that's under the purview of John Podesta. He's governing that to basically provide to, I think, organizations and city, state, and county with strings attached, enticing everybody to go to Energy Star.
Yeah, so maybe not tie it back to the beginning of this whole presentation. That's what's pushing for a lot of this code enforcement, like raising the bar on the code. But at the same time, they've earmarked 100 times that much money to go out towards all these incentives. They're incentivizing the utility companies are incentivizing the builders, federal government's incentivizing the builders, the states, the cities. And so hopefully, we can come help offset some of the pains being caused by those higher energy requirements. I guess it's really just kind of Q&A from here on out. Here's our contact info. If anyone wants to take a picture or come talk to me, I can give you my card. Yeah, I guess, really open Q&A. If anyone has any questions on anything, or questions, comments, complaints, concerns.
Where do we go for the happy hour again?
We go to recess.
Is there just one?
I will pull it up right now because I forget the address.
800 something West, West Kenzie.
Yep.
It's next to City Hall, another bar.
Yep.
Okay. Right. So we get our permit and go run across the street?
It is,
It's the wrong City Hall.
Oh, okay.
This is the liquid one.
what is it, Fulton Market?
It's, yeah, it's the Fulton Market, north part of the Fulton Market area.
Yep.
City Hall is a bar there.
It's
Yeah.
called recess. It'll be fun.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good job.
If there's no other questions. Well, as I think we've learned a lot of different ways to get paid to go green today. And are you taking advantage of them? That's the most important part. Everyone who presented today is going to be available for follow-up. You will be getting, for all the attendees, we'll send you copies of the slides so that you've got that as follow-up. And for the video, the same thing, we'll make the connections to the information that we share. But again, thank you very much. Well, one other thing I want to say is that Alan, does a great job for the Home Builders Association of Illinois, but he really needs a lot of support from the members for advocacy. It's not enough for him alone to be testifying and making comments on the code. We as members, we as staff, we as whatever role you play, need to support him in what we're doing down there, because we have to be seen more than just one person commenting. We have to be seen as the industry that we are. And we are a huge industry. In years past, we were multi-billion dollars in Illinois, but home building has fallen back. So we're only a couple $1 billion now, but it's a big impact in the state of Illinois. And so your role as an advocate on behalf of the industry, very important to us, and it supports Alan in Springfield. With that, I want to thank everybody here for coming. And if there's any leftover food, help yourself to it, because I can't take it home. All right, thank you very much.